welcome to yet another review where I thoroughly enjoyed the book and rave about how wonderful it was. Now, I know this is a little bit disappointing to a couple of my viewers who prefer it, shall I say, if I find a book that I don't much love, they enjoy my rants and me waving my hands around and saying all the things that were wrong with the book. It isn't a shame for me. I like reading good books, which I enjoy, and I have to say that my decision to stick back to classic science fiction and fantasy is working really well for me this year. It's February already, and I've read so many books that were really good and which I really enjoyed, and I really haven't read that many that I didn't enjoy. Today we've got a corker of a book. Samuel R Delany wrote Nova in Sphere Science Fiction. This is such a beautiful cover. It's so very classic to its period. Like I said, it's a Sphere. This one was published in... I had it here a second ago. Where is it? Oh yes, this one was published in 1971. It was the first edition from Sphere. And this was first published in Great Britain in general in 1967. So I guess a couple of words about the book itself. It's one of the many books that I got in my November book haul with my full 170 books, which was an amazing book haul. At that stage, I picked up this book because I guess I was in a bit of a feeding frenzy. There were so many good classic sci-fi and fantasy coming at me, and I couldn't resist them. And I saw I was getting a really good price too, and I saw this one. I went, Samuel R Delany. I know that name. I know who's a good author. I don't remember what of his I've read. I know I've read something. I know I liked it. So I bought it on speculation. I don't think I actually own a single Delany on my bookshelf, but I know I have read him in the past. I expect that on one of my many dozens of moves, I had to get rid of some books, and he wasn't one that I cherished quite as much as, let's say, Zelazny or Vance, and I just didn't keep him. I was wrong. He's an amazing author. Now, this book is unusual in that it is in really good condition. And actually, on my November book haul, I remember thinking that I was maybe benefiting from someone's loss. Like maybe someone had died and donated their entire science fiction collection to Lifeline. Possibly it was that someone had to move to a nursing home and they didn't have enough space for their full sci-fi collection, because this book has no stamps, no writing. It looks to me as if it was bought new. I might be only its second owner, or maybe there's been another one in between, but it just looks like it was bought new. It's been read clearly, which I like in a book. I like a good book to be read. But it's still in excellent condition. And that classic artwork for a classic book, how good is that? Really, it's great. Now, I remembered liking Delany. I was correct to like him. The writing is beautiful. It is lyrical. It is poetic. The writing in itself is enough to make it a unique and wonderful book. Unlike some science fiction books, I wouldn't recommend this to a non-science fiction reader who enjoyed good writing. This is very much a science fiction adventure book. And it's an amazing story. It's a story, it's got adventure, it's got locations, it's got a huge amount of character development considering it's only 224 pages. Oh, here's another thing about this book. It's been very, very carefully fixed with a bit of masking tape when the cover and spine tore a little bit. Again, a lot of love has been shown to this book. I plan to keep on loving it. So yes, adventure, locations, character development. Locations are on Earth and off Earth and in the Pleiades. And there's social justice elements, and there's a lot in there for such a relatively short book. And that, I think, is something that you see in your classic science fiction. The authors didn't have trilogies, and they didn't have long sequels. The publishers weren't pushing for authors to write sequences of 8 books instead of just one. the general book was smaller and they had to make the writing count, and boy, could they make this writing count. 200 pages. You have got so much more in there. I would argue that you've got more in this beautiful little story than you often will get in a whole trilogy of more modern writing, which, and I'm not knocking modern writing and I'm not knocking trilogies. Some of them are great, some of them are crap, some of them are great. But the modern author, the modern publisher, the modern reader, they expect different things to what they expected in the 60s when they were writing. So I have heard someone say that Nova is right on the segment between Delany. You should look Delany up, by the way, if you're into classic authors. He was an amazing man. He was born in Harlem in America. His mother was a librarian, which made me feel a little bit smug because he obviously had that early connection to books. He started writing, I think with the assistance of his mother, though I could be wrong about that. He had his first book published when he was 20, and that was already a science fiction, and he just kept on writing science fiction. Later in his life, he wrote a lot of other stuff. He wrote fiction, he wrote non-fiction, he wrote a whole heap of really amazing books, which I mostly haven't read, I have to admit, but I want to now. And his early science fiction adventure books, some people have said that Nova was right at the end of those early science fiction style books before he went into his next stage of writing. And I've had other people who claimed that no, this was actually the start of his next phase of writing when he was writing more, what is that word? Meta-functional? Meta something or other books. Anyway, whatever it is, it's got beautiful writing, very skillful, very absorbing, and it's not a fast read. So for a 200-page book, you'd expect perhaps to be a fast read, but the writing itself is so rich that it's not going to be fast. You're going to stop, you're going to enjoy the luxury of the descriptions. You're going to think with the characters about the world around them. At least I did. I hope you do too. So the novel is set in 3172, when most human belongs to one of two factions. There's an Earth-based, many planets, many suns system called Draco, with Earth as the center of it, though I don't believe Earth was always the center of it. And then there's the Pleiades Federation further out. And then there's the outer colonies. I'm not quite clear on whether the outer colonies and the Pleiades Federation are the same, or if the outer colonies are breaking out into their own little socio-political structure. It seems as if that could be the case. So the balance of this galactic power and the different federations and the interactions between them all is based on Illyrian, which is the most precious energy source in the universe. 1 gram, I gather, will power a dozen huge spaceships. But with that power, you can go from the Pleiades to Earth in a day or two. It's really fast travel, really inexpensive travel, I'm going to guess, once you've actually got the Illyrian. Which, there's a lot of sci-fi chemistry here. It talks about the periodic table. It makes nods at the different elements that are later on in the periodic table. I think people talk of them as the manufactured elements. And some of them are very, very short-lived, so they come into existence and they go out of existence within microseconds of each other. So those elements aren't particularly relevant. I don't think Illyrian is a real element, but Delany was clearly writing in that part of the periodic table when he invented it. Only fragments of the Illyrian exist. It can be mined on 1 or 2 places in the outer Pleiades. The main place it exists is in the hearts of burning suns, and that means that it's quite hard to acquire. On Earth, they have a system of manufacturing it, which is slow and expensive. On the outer Pleiades, they have a habit of mining it, which is even slower and more expensive, and we gather a bit dangerous. Now, the main character in this novel isn't really the character that we start with, and I like that tactic. So we start on Triton. There's a young man called the Mouse in a tavern, a spaceport type tavern, and a blind man named Dan blunders up to his table and starts to tell him this long story about how he flew on Lork van Ray's starship, the Rock. Lork von Ray is one of the big families in this future universe. So, a scion, I think, is a good word for it. He's a scion of the wealthy von Ray family, which is a combination of originally from Old Earth Norwegian family, with his father, and again, originally from Earth, I'm going to say Senegal, but I might be wrong, it might be Sri Lanka. Mother. In any case, it's the most powerful clan of the Pleiades Federation. And Lork, as a child, moved between different places, and as a young man, he grew into a spaceship. He's a racer. He races spaceships. It's a small one. It's very pretty. The main conflict in this novel is between Lork von Ray and his relatives, but I digress. Actually, I go ahead of myself. So this blind man named Dan is telling the mouse in this tavern how he flew on Lork van Ray's starship, which is the Rock, and the Rock was heading into a nova. Now, the mouse is notable for being a gypsy who grew up unplugged. Now, apparently in this future universe, everyone has these little plastic plugs inserted here and here, and I believe in the feet as well. And nearly everyone has them. Apparently a few gypsies escaped the net, but everyone on Earth or the Pleiades or everywhere has them. And work means having the training and the plugs to plug into machinery and then operate it like you would manually operate your digits, only you're operating the machinery. So this blind man named Dan was a cyber operator of the vanes on a spaceship. And when Lork von Ray went into a nova, instead of closing down all his sensory apparatus, he left it open because he wanted to see what a nova was like, and that blasted his senses, so that now he's blind and deaf, but at the same time, all his sense nerves are being constantly stimulated. It sounds like hell on earth to me. And it's obviously not so great for Dan either. Now, this interaction between Dan telling the story and Mouse trying to have a drink in peace gives us the setting to learn more about Mouse. Grew up a gypsy on Earth, and then the gypsies disbanded and we never quite know what happened there, but Mouse was on his own, so he's a street kid and a thief. And then one day he came across this amazing instrument, which is almost the defining feature of Mouse. He's the player of this instrument called a syrinx. Two I's and an X. Too many letters in one word. It's like a Scrabble game gone wrong. Anyway, it's an instrument which you play and it produces sound, images and sense in a combination where you virtually have this experience. Come on. No? Okay. So, yes, there's music, but it's a whole sensory experience. Oh, okay. Excuse me 1 second while I placate the bird. Come on, bird. Say hello, Reepy Cheep. I still don't know how to cut and paste videos. Just have to bear with me. So, yes, that's Mouse. And he's met Dan, and then he goes for a bit of a walk, meets another character called Katrin, doesn't be K. Caton Crawford. Caton Crawford is an educated young man, I'm going to say 20s, perhaps a little bit overeducated. He's been to university and everything, but all he really wants to do is glom around on moons, do manual type work that's well below his education level. He's got pretensions of one day writing and publishing a novel in a world where novels don't exist and people don't read. So that's an interesting thing. Basically, we go through a number of interesting characters like Sebastian and Tia, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, who have got some intriguing pets that sound reptilian and flap around, and you never hear enough about them. They're not like you, they're black and they flap. there's so much more in this novel that you want to know. At no point does it overexpose. There's always more that you would like to know, like Sebastian and his pets and so forth. Always more. It always leaves you wanting more. So anyway, we've got Lork von Ray, and he happens to be on Triton as well. He recruits this group of characters who to crew this next starship that he's got. He's going to make another attempt at a Nova, but he doesn't tell them that straight up. He just pretty much hires them, and they go knocking around the galaxy, and we find in chapter 3, I think it is, we find a little bit more of Lork's backstory of his childhood and how he butted heads with Prince and Ruby, who are of the family Red, and the Red family on Earth has as much stay in that part of the cosmos as the Von Rays do in the Pleiades. So you've got this dynamic where basically Von Ray is going into the Nova to get the Illyrium, and eventually, this is spoilery, but whatever, it's books older than mine. Eventually, you find out that the reason why he launched this Illyrium, it's not so much that he's suicidal or homicidal, it's that his family in the Pleiades feel the need to break the stranglehold that Earth has on the social political situation, and the only real way they can do that and to enable the social change that they're in favour of is to make space travel available for many people. So Von Ray wants to dive into this Nova and bring back tons of the stuff, because tons will supply all the various federations and civilization, and it will overturn everything. At the same time, you've got Prince and his sister Ruby Red, who want to counter him doing this because that will take away the balance of their power on Earth. The Red family are in transportation, and if their stranglehold on transportation is locked, they cease to be the powerful family that they are. I did find the notion of Prince and Ruby Red an interesting character. We first encounter them when Lork von Ray is about, I think he's a child, he's 5 or 6. He's on one of the many planets where they have a home, and there's this big party. The Red family, including Prince and Ruby with their father Aaron, come there. Prince is clearly a sadist and a bully, and he treats Lork poorly on that occasion. One of the few things in this book that I didn't think worked and didn't make any sense was the fact that as an adult, I guess he's in his early 20s, Lork is a bit of a playboy. He's racing spaceships, and he gets this invitation from Prince to come to Earth and join his party. Now, they haven't had any other interactions except for that one time when they were children and Prince hurt him, killed animals, and then broke his mother's hand. It seems odd that Lork then accepted this invitation. It's like, I don't know about you guys, but my experience is that children who are bullied remember, and they're later cautious of the people who bullied them. So Lork's sudden acceptance of just going and joining Prince's party was odd, but it did give Delany the chance to make this amazing party. So in Paris, there's that island, Paris Island, what is it called? In the middle of, bugger. This is very embarrassing. I haven't even been to Paris. Never mind. I'm not going to remember. Forget it. Whatever. No, I'm bothered by it. Bugger. Can't remember. Anyway, so he goes to this party. It gives Delany a wonderful opportunity to give us an image of Paris, and in Mouse's background we've already had an image of Greece. These were apparently based on the fact that when Samuel Delany was a young man, he did a year travelling overseas, including Paris and Greece, and they've often featured in his earlier sci-fi novels. The end of that encounter as a young man left a scar, a literal scar as well as a metaphorical one, on Lorke, and sets up the rest of the novel, because in this Prince repeatedly refers to him as a pirate and scum. Lorke doesn't know why he's saying that, and that doesn't make sense to me either. Going to the party of someone who was a bully and treated you badly and has never treated you any other way, not smart. But Lorke grew to adulthood not knowing that his family were originally kind of pirates who settled in the Pleiades, and that they gathered their traction and their wealth and societal status from hijacking spaceships that were trying to make the Pleiades very much company planets. It seems odd to me that you wouldn't know that, but again, it makes for a good story, so I'm not really complaining about it. The one thing that a lot of people get different things from this book, and I've read other people's reviews and seen what they got from it was interesting. The thing that I got from it was there's this duality, there's this common theme of the duality of the bad, the evil brother and sister, or the evil twin. Tanith Lee did it very well in the Silver Metal Level with Jason and Medea, but here we have Prince and Ruby Red, and it's left as obscure. I mean, Prince is clearly a psychopath and not a nice person. Ruby is similarly inclined. She's very much his mouth when they're younger. And later it seems like the book is leaving it open as to whether she's a good person under bad influence, she's not, or whether they're both different manifestations of evil. I really enjoyed that duality of the bad guy. I think it made it more interesting, and it certainly gave a better hook for why Lorke was engaging with Prince at all, which wouldn't make sense otherwise without the dynamic of Ruby bringing it into a sort of multi-socialization affair. So I'm not going to say how the book ends. It's a cracker of an ending. It's a great ending. Thoroughly enjoyable. I will say that the real beauty of this book is the fact that the writing itself is, like I said, poetic, lyrical, and beautiful, and mix that with what seems to be almost a quintessential early sci-fi adventure, and you've got a marvelous book. So, Samuel R Delany, I don't think you can get this copy, but whether you do or not, find a copy and read it if you like classic sci-fi. But if you don't read this, find another good book to read, because we should always read good books.